And welcome everyone to Rock M Radio. This is a brand new episode of Dive Cuts. We're on season 6. 6 seasons of mostly me and mostly this guy talking nonsense. I am your host, Sam Snelling, the site manager at Rock M Nation, along to the right of the screen, if you're watching this on YouTube, is Matthew J. Harris. Matt, how are you?
I'm well. We have many reasons to be well over the last 5 days, but excited for what seems to be shaking up as a pretty good class in 2024.
Yeah, so Matt Watkins and I recorded last week, and we were speaking on the hypotheticals of Annor Boateng becoming a Missouri Tiger. It all seemed likely last week. However, I don't think we quite expected it to occur on Friday. And sure enough, on Friday, our man Annor Boateng, the consensus composite 5-star, I think composite 5-star recruit out of Little Rock, Arkansas, committed to Dennis Gates and the Missouri Tigers. It was an exciting day all around. Matt, what was your initial reaction? I mean, I know that you were hard at work on the commitment piece, and I thank you for pumping that out.
It's a good problem to have when you're debating whether or not it's the number 26 kid in the composite or the number 9 kid who's on campus in the composite. These are first world problems. These are not problems we are accustomed to having for a long time.
That is true. Yeah, there was some thought there for a second that maybe Jayden Quaintance popped. It turns out that it wasn't the one who was on campus.
No, I think the thing that surprised me about this was how kind of quickly it wrapped. Every indication had been that that Annor Boateng was gonna get to IU, which was supposed to be scheduled for this weekend for a visit. I think there was confidence on the IU side that if they got him in Bloomington, that they could, make that final push. I think, we can talk about it, or we probably will get to it, as sort of, the optics of, going into Arkansas and pulling a kid out. I wrote about it today, but I think the real facet that stood out to me was that they really had to hold off IU here. IU is, been able to, put in resources, hire a really good staff. Mike Woodson's got a fantastic staff there. They've been big game hunting all 2024. Since about May, they've prioritized Boateng, really made a push, got in there. They had the final visit lined up. And I think, we had sort of prepared for this thing to get into October and really see if there was going to be a decision. But around Thursday night, it started getting around that the visits were off. And when visits are off, you look at, obviously, who's had the visits at that point. It had been Arkansas, Georgia Tech, and Missouri, and LSU. LSU has been prioritizing some other wings or has some guys higher up the board. Arkansas has got some guys that it's prioritized. So it really came down to, is it been Missouri who's sort of been in the driver's seat, or has Georgia Tech pulled off a coup here? And sure enough, Missouri, prevailed here. I think they've had an advantage through most of the summer. They withstood it, and Arkansas getting a visit, and it was to the point where the Boatengs canceled the other one. So rapid fire at the end, but the result that everybody wants, even if it was a little bit of a hectic wrap up there.
Yeah, so they offered Annor last August.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
And really since then, I think we should kind of shout out Missouri assistant Kyle Smith-Peters, who was kind of front and center, was leading the recruitment there. Dennis Gates always plays a role the head coach is always going to play a role in recruiting every kid that signs with the school. Yeah. But the primary recruiter, for this was Smith-Peters. And he's a guy who, least amount of experience on the coaching staff, but certainly a guy with plenty of coaching experience and a good relationship builder. You have to be a good relationship builder if you're coaching in junior college ranks.
Yep.
And he did that. He got in. had a strong connection with Annor and his family, and it paid off. Like this is really Kyle's first big fish. I
Yeah.
think we could say that, as far as landing a borderline 4-star 5-star kid.
Yeah, at the high major level, it is at the high major
Yeah.
level for sure.
So
Yeah, they've
credit to him.
Yeah, big credit there. He had landed T.O. Barrett was the primary recruiter there. This was I think it was interesting to see that, Marcus Allen, was kind of the guy that, CY had been on for a long, long time. And, Peyton Marshall too, but the two commits in this class are going to be T.O. Barrett and Annor Boateng, regional guys. If you look kind of at, when I track in the spreadsheets, who the primary recruiter is, Kyle's sort of that regional recruiter, does a lot of stuff in Oklahoma, Arkansas, obviously has relationships in Illinois and Indiana, Kentucky from his time at Logan in Southern Illinois. If you see it all, he's there for all the MOCAN, BBE games. He is the guy that, you are handling regional recruiting for. Dickie Nutt does a little bit in Arkansas. He's kind of working, I think, ahead on some 25 and 26 kids, but this was Smith Peters' brief, was to go make this happen, and to open up at this level with this kind of player too. Sometimes with 5 stars, you're talking about potential, or is it physical fit, or is it what are they going to do when they develop him here? Boateng can come on campus, and I think I said a couple of weeks ago, he's a guy that I think you can plug in and hope for him to be that maybe tertiary, that second or third option in your scoring rotation. He's got the tools to get there and be an impact guy, and to get that to be your first guy, and then on top of it to go into a really tough recruiting footprint and pull him out it's notable, and it's a really, really big win for Kyle and for the staff and for him moving forward. I think it's the kind of result you want to see from a staff like this at this point.
I also like to commend you, sir, on your hoodie this evening. You want to show that off for the people?
Oh yeah, it's a comfortable hoodie from Eventide Oyster Company in Portland, Maine. It's fantastic. It is
a quality restaurant.
It is a quality restaurant
that both you and I have eaten at. So not together. 5 years apart. But things are still churning up there. Yeah, we've been talking even before we went to record for 5-10 minutes before this. I didn't even notice that you were wearing that, so had to point that out.
It is a Carhartt hoodie, which it blows my mind that Carhartt is a fashion brand now. But this was like the work hoodie I wore when I did landscaping in high school. It's like the most comfortable hoodie in the entire world, and it just happens to rep this group, and they do really, really good service up there. It's worth every penny to go eat there. Fantastic bourbon selection for a seafood place as well. But this, to bring it back to the recruiting class, this is sort of going to be a pivot point too. Boateng is in the boat. Boateng in the boat. And where they go from here.
I got that. I picked it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not subtle at all. That transition was not subtle. That joke was not subtle.
Well, so you kind of made mention of it, but and you wrote about it too. Is the sort of signal that this is to go into the Arkansas footprint and pull out sort of top 50 kids is something that's really kind of reserved for blue bloods and Arkansas. Like those are the kinds of players that if you're a top 50 level, kind of player in Arkansas, you're either going to go to a blue blood or you're going to go play for Arkansas. There's no real guys that are in that range that are going to Missouri.
Not really.
We've said for a long time though that that Boateng and his family are a little bit different. They're not born and bred Arkansas folks. The Boatengs, I believe, moved there.
Yeah.
When he was young, but they moved there to work at Arkansas Little Rock.
Yep.
and so his, they're basically newer-ish to the state, and I think that also kind of plays a role in this as well. Is like, there's something about kids that are like born and raised in Arkansas that they grow up hog fans, and for the most part they end up going to Arkansas.
Yeah. I've lived and worked in Arkansas. Lived 2 miles from Little Rock Central High School. Shout out to Soma. Shout out to Cantrell Road, and every place there. I tried to think of an anecdote, and it would just sound cheesy, but it's the kind of place where if you like are in Little Rock, like if you go to a bar or restaurant on Thursday night, and if it's late enough, somebody will just randomly call the Hogs. It could be mid-June with nothing going on, and somebody will call the Hogs. You could, be, I've been in a grocery checkout line in the Heights in Little Rock, after a Razorback football game, just people like grocery shopping, and people have called the Hogs. If you drive through Southeast Arkansas, exactly catty corner from the state, you will see Hog Country with the slobbering hog on a sign. It is everything Mizzou fans wish that they had for an in-state recruiting advantage is there. And,
Yeah.
When Malik Monk and Archie Goodwin left the state, there were radio shows that were throwing around traitor as labels that were affixed to those kids. It is, if it's a kid that Arkansas really wants and that is perceived as being vital to that program's success, the omnipresent pressure is insane. It is something that Missouri will not have, does not have, has never had.
Yeah.
And I think part of that, to your point, is it's grown there. It's in your family. It's, in your community. Little Rock Central is a bit different as a high school. It is a magnet school. It's a lot like Hickman High School in Columbia, my high school alma mater. Big high school, baccalaureate programs, kind of like the best of the best go there. Not really known as a basketball power until recently, until Brian Ross got there and has managed to get some good kids in that city there. Usually it's been Parkview or Hall that are the big schools there. So it's kind of known as the more academically oriented school, not really a big basketball tradition as compared to others, so I think that's kind of a big deal. At Parkview, Scotty Thurman is the basketball coach. So that kind of gives you a good sense for what things are like there. Boateng's parents are academics. His mom works at the med school. His dad works at UALR. I think in the communications department there. I can't remember if that's related to medicine or if he's just housed or if he's just in a different department there. But a little bit different family, not from the area, not at a school or a kind of a culture that's as steeped in we ship guys to Fayetteville. And so,
Right.
So, I think if you were to look at kind of the conditions on the ground there was some opportunity for Missouri to get in there. They worked early and, the relationships paid off in the end. But I do think, it's exceptionally rare to still extract a kid here. And, we can even talk about the push that IU made, down the stretch. We talked about it a little bit earlier. That's hard to ignore. When IU has really leaned into guys the last couple of years, they've tended to win those battles. So, to hold up to, go into Arkansas and get a kid out and then to kind of simultaneously fend off IU as it's putting its full weight in, collectively, that's a really big recruiting win, here. I don't want to undersell that at all. It's a big win and it's a big proof of concept for what this staff has needed. This was kind of the thing. Could they win a battle at this kind of level? And they have so far. We can talk about the battles they've got to win coming, down the pike. Aaron Rowe being, the headliner there, but it's the kind of, or even in the near term for Jayden Quaintance in this class. But you want to see your staff win this kind of battle. It was a battle that, unfortunately Zoe didn't win, when the stakes got ramped up a bit. So we'll see what happens from here, but it's a good sign for the proof of concept for how the staff is working.
So Boateng is the fourth highest rated player in the 247 sports era to commit to the Tigers after Michael Porter Jr., Tony Mitchell,
Do we
and
count
Linus
him? He didn't
Kleza.
make it. Do
Huh?
we count? Do we really count Tony? Do we
He
count it?
committed.
Okay.
He committed. Hey, it's on 247 Sports. I'm counting it. I don't think it makes a big difference if he's the third or fourth. I like landing a player ranked that high for Missouri isn't normal. I think Dennis Gates and his staff are trying to make it more normal, but to date, it has not been something that they do.
Not since the early days of Quinn. Not
Yeah.
since there was that period. I think people want to say Norm lost it near the end, but that 98 class was number 2 in the RSCI. His next to last class was 2, and then I think 3 out of.
Well, Keon Dooling was he was a 5-star kid, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a borderline McDonald's All-American candidate that year. And then you would have, I think 3 out of Quinn's first 5 classes were top 10 level classes in the RSCI. So there was a period where I think Missouri ripped off like 12 top 100 commits.
It's really it's also really difficult to look. I would say even the early 2010s, it's difficult to look earlier than that.
Yeah.
Because the landscape for recruiting, how players are recruited, the level of information that is available on recruits, the number of times that scouts get to see players, it's all just been amplified so much. We have so much more knowledge of kind of like what players are now than we did, when I was playing.
Yeah, and the RSCI, to its credit, though, really tried to source guys that were doing big national newsletters, and Tellup and Burleson, all those guys who were doing newsletters contributed. So I thought it was, at least when I was following recruiting, when I was younger, that felt like kind of the closest you got to an aggregate consensus. Definitely not what we have now, but still, when the guys who were out there getting the most exposure, watching these guys the most, were putting guys in the top 100. It felt like a good run in there. Even we forget a guy like Trevon Bryant was number 21 in the RSCI and a McDonald's All-American. We just completely forget that guy was in the mix there too. So there have been, I think people rightly sort of look at that as a missed opportunity, but Missouri, to bring it back now, has not recruited at that level for at least 2 decades. It's been 20 years since they were on that kind of run. Dennis Gates has not taken a commitment from anybody lower than 120th in the composite. The next 2 years may be that time where you could start to see the kind of commensurate recruiting that we saw in early Quinn, if this staff can really get the momentum rolling. So I think that's what's exciting here too, is the low end here is still really good. If they can start to land more top end guys, it may start to rival what Quinn was doing in terms of raw talent acquisition for the program. So
another thing that I thought was sort of interesting about the fact that he's a 5-star in the composite is that he's not a 5-star in any of the services. He's a 4. Now, I mean, on 3, I think he's the highest rated. He's 17th, I think.
Yeah, he's depending on
but
how
he's still a 4-star, which is it's one of those things. I don't when you're talking about a kid who's ranked 15th and a kid who's ranked 18th, there's really not a big difference. It comes down to what the individual scout is probably looking for. And for the most part, I think classes tend to kind of have a consensus, these are the best 5 to 8 players.
Yeah.
And then after that, it can kind of there can be disagreements among scouts, but I think for the most part, anybody's going to be able to look at the top players in the class, be oh yeah, this is a top 5 player. Everybody knows how good Cooper Flagg is, for example.
Yeah. It depends on what the most operandi of the scouting service is. 247 still seems to project more to college production.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas On 3 is very explicit, we're trying to project NBA players. I don't know what ESPN does. They have the widest divergence from anybody, being Cardi. Knows basketball, but I mean their rankings diverge probably the biggest. Rivals is
Oh,
more
being
curious.
Borzello's still there, right?
Borzello's still there, but he's doing more general college basketball stuff at this point. Like they've kind of roped him in. He still goes out in the summer, but I don't know if he's as heavy in recruiting. Rivals the is mostly in line, I think, with consensus in 247, but there are like usually 5 to 10 prospects in the Rivals 150 that are just off the grid different, either high or low. About 5 that are higher than on 3 or 247, or about 5 that are lower. That's why we use the composite index, because we want to try and put it all together. And on Boateng, I think the general consensus is like 26th is a 5-star in their composite, but it's toward the back end. So I think he's basically a high end of 5-star, and I think the on 3 ranking is probably what's tipping him over. If I had to guess, without really looking at their algorithm,
Well, and I think he's like 21st in Rivals too, or
yeah,
22nd or third, something like that.
Yeah, he's 41st, I think, in 247 actually has him lowest in their individual rankings. So
yeah, we need to talk to Bossy, get that ranking up. He's a bourbon guy.
Boost, offer him something. Offer him something off the bar cart, Sam. Offer him something.
Hey. Go ahead.
No, regardless, 26 composite is still just dandy. Although there's one guy still out there. We'd love to make his acquaintance. We would love to. We would love
to. I see what you did there.
Yeah. There you change the banner.
The banner is up.
This is simulcasting at its finest.
So let's talk about this. We're talking about, of course, Jayden Quaintance, who is a very highly ranked recruit. I believe he's 9th in the composite right now.
Yep.
A very much consensus 5-star. He is a 5-star in every service. I think at this point we've explained the situation. He was a 2025 recruit. He just turned 16. So if he hits campus, if he hits anybody's campus next year, it will be as a 17-year-old. He is a very big, strong young man. His bloodlines are strong. His dad was a sort of a post player at Kent State. His mom was she a volleyball player, or is that somebody else I'm thinking of? And then, but also has some NFL bloodlines in there. I think one of her brothers was an NFL tight end. So yeah, athleticism was bred into this kid, and that's certainly what they got. He is. I've made the comparison before. I think comparison is a fair one, at least in his body type and sort of how he moves. He reminds me a lot of Chris Webber.
Yeah.
He is just a physically imposing young man, and the fact that he wherever he goes is going to have 2 years to play, I think is a big thing. Is why a lot of schools are trying to get in and get him on campus and have him for 2 years.
Physically, I mean, you can shape him up, but I mean, if you just look at him on, as he is right now, doesn't look 17. Looks like if you got him on campus and into a weight program, he could probably physically hold up. Played with a lot of 18 and 19-year-olds last year in OTE with Word of God Academy. Played up with 17-year-olds this summer with Team Thad and Team Loaded. When I watched him at the FIBA U16 event over the summer, playing kids his own age, the poor Argentinian kid who had to try and box him out for 40 minutes, just turned to his coach and just did this, and his coach just did this. Just yeah, I know you're trying, it's just not working. I think the thing I tried to drive home about him is he flashes on offense. I don't think there's a thing I could point to him right now saying there's a skill that you could hang. They could really kind of hang baseline production on when he's, played in settings, whether it's at, the Adidas, grassroots circuit or on FIBA, with Team USA, it's been mostly as a cutter and a guy who's going to get on the glass. He got to show some skill, and I think I tweeted out a thread last week with some video from OTE, but still a guy that, pops and goes in bursts. He's still got to, I think, put pieces together offensively. But man, to watch him on the defensive end, he get him with a strength coach, get him ready there, get him onto a good meal plan. Tools are right there to be an impact. We talk about modern switchable fives. That's what this kid is.
Yeah.
He can guard 1 to 5. Like guys who are, got switched onto the Thompson twins and can sit down. Maybe they'll get to the rim, but they're not going to get there off the first attack. They're going to have to counter. He can move his feet that well. Second jump is phenomenal. Guys almost seem surprised that he's there on the second jump. Absurd reach. I think he's like a +6 wingspan. Really fluid. Can flip hips and turn. Plays any kind of coverage you want. I know people aren't gonna, really tune in to watch guys defend, but all the tools are there to be an absolute monster on the defensive end.
But Matt, even though Missouri had some success not defending last year, being good on defense is generally considered a positive thing.
This is where I come down on the 24 class. There are potentially 4 soul-eating defenders in this class. Like, we watch tape, we look at the offensive end. T.O. Barrett can play good team defense and can sit down and take a lot of really good guards on the ball and handle them. Marcus Allen, +6 wingspan, can switch everything. Annor Boateng, probably more of an average wingspan, but just physically ready, great lateral agility, can slide, can sit down, guard the ball. Off switches, can probably guard all 3 guard spots easily. Jayden Quaintance can switch 1 to 5. Just a monstrous defensive class if they can wrap it up. You put that with Trent Pierce, you put that with Aiden Shaw. That's 6 dudes that can just put the clamps on people.
Cover a lot of ground.
You don't worry about them gambling so much and recovering. That's the thing. I think people are always going to say, what do they do on offense? What's this game like? We look at that, but every guy that you watch that they're bringing in has the tools to be a high-level defender. And even, Anthony Robinson, has to, put on some weight a little bit, but really quick hands when he turns guys. He's able to get and reach in, knock the ball away, create steals. It's a group that I think, we'll obviously look at their offensive development. We'll, look at how they fit the scheme there. But in the next, these first 2 classes may get 5 or 6 guys that are just going to be high-level college defenders. Like that to me is, we always, Zoe always talked about, I want guys that can defend. I want guys that can buy in. Sure. With 3-star guys that have work ethic, that, that's a given. The bodies that they're getting right now with that work ethic, it in 2 years, this could be an absolute monster of a defensive team. That I think that's the one thing I keep putting a pin in is we'll talk about offensive development, we'll talk about scheme fit, but these guys have the potential to all lock down and guard. And if you're going to be an aggressive switching team, if you're going to do what Missouri does, these are the kinds of bodies you need to go get. So I think that to me is sort of the heartening thing is they're getting the guys they need to play defense the way they want.
Well, so getting a little bit back to the topic at hand is the latest with Quaintance is that he has left campus. There is not a pending commitment. Our latest understanding is basically that Missouri is maybe amongst like the top choices. There are those that believe they are leading. I don't know that I would go that far yet. I would say that maybe they have the strongest offer at this point. But I do think that they've done enough with the relationship building the official visit that it's a strong offer, and not just from the NIL point, but what they're sort of trying to commit to do with Quaintance and build him into the type of player that I think he wants to be. I think the only question is, does he want to go to school? And
we don't mean that in a pejorative way at all.
no, like I mean, he's going to make a lot of money as a basketball player. Do you want to start? And no matter what he does next season, he's going to make a lot of money. In comparison to what he's going to make over his career, probably not as much, but he's a guy who projects as a potential lottery pick. And so I think what the realistic option here is, like, if you have the choice to become a professional and go get paid in the thing that you're going to be a pro at for the foreseeable future, do you want to get started early?
Yeah.
And go to the G League and just start earning that way? And because the benefit of that is that basketball becomes your life, and you can there are no restrictions on how much contact coaches can have with you, and you don't have to worry about going to classes. And because even if like I'm sure to some level you probably want to continue an education and possibly work towards getting a degree, but like he's not gonna get a degree before he's an NBA player, I think. Is what I'm getting at. So
realistically, when you compare, we're still trying to get a big enough sample with G League Ignite, but their average draft slot for a G League Ignite guy is equal to what a top 15 guy will get if he goes to college. The real question to you, what you said earlier, is, what do you want to have happening around the games? The G League Ignite, I think really everything is catered to the idea of maintaining your draft stock and maximizing it. Not to say that Dennis Gates doesn't want to boost guys' draft stock and doesn't want to put guys high in the draft as possible, but the G League Ignite isn't sitting there in January going, shit, we're 3 games back of a playoff spot. We got to park Jayden so we can play vets to get in. Or Jayden's struggling a little bit on the defensive end. Let's plug in this grad transfer that we got who can soak up 10, 12 minutes because we know he's just going to rebound and defend because we want to boost our seed line. There's not those sort of trade-offs in play. The veterans they signed to the G League roster, for example, are locker room guys that are there to model how to be a pro, how to go about your work. Everything on the player development and nutrition side is to make sure you're maximized and healthy and ready to go. If you can't play, like Scoot Henderson sat for stretches this season to preserve his health for when the combine season got here. Everything caters to that objective of maxing out your draft slot. If that's the goal, and if you read, how Heyman Quaintance talks about what they've done, everything has been pointed towards, what are you going to do to get us ready for the pros? What are you going to get us ready to go do this? You could have a really compelling offer, but if the money is equal, I think at the end of the day, you really have to consider what the G League is going to offer in totality, getting him ready. And to your point, if you just want to go be a pro, go be a pro. That's we wouldn't say that if it was somebody who was like, going to be able to go play in the New York Philharmonic. If you can go do that, if you can go be a pro every day and work, go do it. It'll be interesting to see what the family values and where Missouri fits relative to what the G League is offering. I think we know that Kentucky's got a track record of putting bigs in the league. John's done a really good job of that. Most of those guys have maintained their value. So I think that's what I'm watching here, is just not what the NIL offers relative to anything else, but the lifestyle choice that he wants to make, that the family feels comfortable with. So to your point, I think the NIL offer isn't irrelevant, but I think it's going to be kind of the more holistic approach and what Jayden wants to get out of the next 2 years before he's presumably putting on a hat on draft night and shaking Adam Silver's hand.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of where we are. I think we're all just essentially kind of watching. I think he's got a visit to Kentucky coming up. And I expect this to go pretty much all the way, and maybe not even up to the first signing day. It's entirely possible he just waits until the spring.
Guys like this can wait that long. Yeah,
and Missouri will wait on him realistically. I mean, like they're happy with their recruiting class, and I think you can wait on a kid like that. I think you also know that the transfer portal is going to be live again in the spring.
You're signing a kid at that position in November anyway. In Peyton Marshall, you're not you're not exiting fall without a big in the pipeline. We can get into it or not, but like realistically, there's a guy like Trent Burns that's sitting out that they brought on an OV. You don't have to pivot and take a commitment from Trent if you don't want to.
Yeah.
You've got Jordan Butler, Peyton Marshall, and you can go get a guy in the spring, to be your third center if you need to. But you can hang in there with Quaintance as long as you need to. So I think that's what I'm interested in is, would they pivot or would they just say, we feel covered, we trust ourselves in the portal. If we don't get him, we have a 4-star big committed already. Let's just let it ride. So I think that's going to be interesting is, would they pivot or not? My suspicion is they'll say, we'll hang in there with you because we get you for 2 years. We get you for 2 years. That's
the bigger thing. I think, you take a talent like that he's an impact guy next year, and you get him for 2 years. Like you will wait it out.
If you paid the G League max salary is $500,000, if you match that and say we're going to pay you $1 million over 2 years, what we know about the fair market value of 5 stars, you're probably paying half. That's probably half of what is fair market value. That's a steal. It's an absurd steal for 2 years. So if I was Dennis and I was the head of the NIL committee, I'd be like, yes, $500,000 for you for each year. Sold. Don't even have to think about it. Absolute steal. So we'll see what they do, but in almost every level, it's worth waiting it out. So just to see if that holds.
So is there anything else that you wanted to hit on before we got out of here?
Apparently practice starts this week around the country.
I think, it started today.
Yeah, it started today.
Practice started. I saw Nate Oates.
The team that will play games this year is starting to get ready. So
Nate Oates had a press conference and said something along the lines of like they only take high character kids, and it was kind of like, what now? Now you're only taking high character kids? Okay, well it makes sense that you would pivot to that from the more recent troubles. No, I kid a little bit. Brandon Miller's a good kid. Has made some poor choices, but the Miles kid, I don't know. He seemed fine, and then all of a sudden, but yeah, Nate. Maybe you don't need to he's just so bad with the media. Like you don't need to jump out there and talk about how high character all your kids are. Let's just
put together a good defense, Nate. Just put together a good defense. That's all you really need to worry about.
That's what you need to worry about this year, sir. Can you get Grant Nelson to move his feet on defense?
You're in the middle of previews. Those will start up.
I've already scheduled the first one. I think I said even last week in South Carolina. So
we're not optimistic about the Gamecocks. We are.
I'm currently working on 13. I know there may be some disagreements. I don't dislike Mike White.
I think he's in the right spot because I think they're going to give him. There is going to be no pressure in these first 2 years for Mike to make a rapid jump.
Well, and realistically, it's not a bad move if you have that leash to just go out and get a lot of good talent that you can.
They may get Ace and Newell, a top 10 kid in this class. That's fantastic if they sign that kid.
No, I was talking about like his classes on campus now.
Oh yeah, his classes on campus now is
It's a
is
good
solid.
class.
It's a solid class. It's got guys that I think, I think people are gonna like oversell guys like Silas DeMary and Blue Kane, but those are guys that are sophomores that could be really, really good. This
Right.
transfer class, I've looked at them. You've looked at them. There's some nice, solid guys here. I don't know if they have an alpha, but our faith in Mike White is minimal. But
Yeah.
as far as putting together a coherent roster, he's done that. So we'll see if it's any good.
It would be the first time.
Then they got to play games. That's
So we are going to get out of here. We are not going to preview the SEC any further. But yeah, so I'm previewing teams. You and Matt Watkins are previewing players. We've got all kinds of previewing coming, which should start up here in a couple weeks. We'll probably come back for some more podcasting before then. And I'm at some point we got to schedule our boy Blake Level for our. I think last year was the SEC conference double pod. So we'll have to set that up. But
he's got to get. Yeah, he's got to get his. He's got to get his commission for stumping for Dennis. We have to help him get there. He's got money he's got to earn. So we'll let him get out here and
make sure he gets as much airtime in front of Missouri fans as possible. So we're gonna get out of here. Thank you everybody for tuning into Rock M Radio. We are a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. We'll be back maybe next week. Maybe we'll take a week off. Maybe Jayden Quaintance will just commit to the Tigers and we'll have to hop right back on. Who knows? Until then, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, just click the subscribe button below. And you can find this podcast through the Apple Podcast app or for iPhone or the Google Podcast app for Android or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. We are also available on Spotify. Just search for Rock M Radio. And if you like other sports, Fans First Sports Network is a podcast network that has coverage of all other teams, Major League Baseball, MLS, NFL, whatever you want to listen and read about. It is a great network full of really fantastic podcasts. So look them up and subscribe to any and all of those podcasts. Rock M Radio will be back with more episodes coming soon. Thanks.